The day Elton John met his songwriting partner, Bernie Taupin, we talked to Ray Williams, the man that introduced him way back when. Ray, who was also featured in the movie Rocketman. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and click on that bell notification so you're updated with all the stuff that we do. We've got a lot of interviews coming up, and of course, there's always music news. If you've seen the movie Rocketman, Ray Williams plays a big part in the beginning of that movie as far as introducing Elton John to Bernie Taupin. Ray Williams is one of the guys I've always wanted to talk to. First of all, he's a great speaker. He's still involved in a lot of music publishing, and we'll give you links to his company where he makes it easier for artists to get their songs published. After he left Elton John, and if you watch Rocketman, you realize that was only a first few albums he was with them. He went on to have a very successful music career. He told me some interesting stories about working with Sonny and Cher, this English boy hanging out in the U.S., where he still lives. My conversation with the great Ray Williams.
And then I signed, for me, one of the great things was Jeff Lynne and his band, The Idle Race. And then this guy came along and answered the ad called Reg Dwight. And so I had him come into the office. And
what was your first reaction?
Well, I'd sort of seen this guy at the Marquee Club when he was playing with Bluesology, because I used to go down to the Marquee Club and you'd see different people there, and always thought how good they were, you know. But when he came in, he said, "I want to, you know, basically, I always remember it. I feel lost, and." I want to pursue a career of my own, but I can't write lyrics. I can only play music. So I said, well, look, why don't you go over there? There's a piano over there, and just sing some songs. All right. So he got up, he went over and played the piano, and the song that always sticks out for me was Jim Reeves' "He'll Have to Go," which he did. It sounded great. And then he did a couple of other things. I said, well, look, let's go make a demo. Let's go. We'll go down to Denmark Street, which was Tin Pan Alley in London. And there's a little studio there called Regent Sound. And I'll try and get a budget from my company. So I got £15 as my budget, £5 an hour. We were going to do a couple of songs, or 3 songs. We actually did 3 songs. And then we had a mix-in, and we had to mix it all in it. But we only had 4 tracks. So with these tapes, I took them back to Liberty. And they didn't like them. They said, well, I don't see it. Bob Reisdorf and Alan Keane, who was a lovely guy, he ran the publishing. He said, I don't get it. I said, well, okay, I like his voice. And I got this letter from Bernie Taupin. And Bernie sent me his lyrics. And basically the gist of his letter was, "Dear Mr. Williams," because he thought I was an old guy, "Dear Mr. Williams, I am essentially a poet, but I think my lyrics could be set to music." And so I read them, and they were out there, but there was something about it that, you know, I just thought, these are good. And I thought, now there's this guy, Reg, who wants to call himself Elton. I'll show him those lyrics and see if there's any interest. So I wrote back to Bernie. I said, look, I'd love you to come down and see me. He lived in Lincoln, so it was quite away from London. And, you know, when you come down and see me, and we'll have a chat and further and see if we can help you. In the meantime, I gave those lyrics to Elton, and he liked them, and basically arranged for Bernie to come down and meet Elton. And that's where it started.
What was that first meeting like?
Well, they sort of they went off and had lunch in a little cafe that was around the corner. Elton turned up at my house that I was living at the time with Bernie and said, "Look, Dick James signed all our agreements. So he's our publisher, he's our record company, he's our manager, he's our agent. But he would be happy to sell the management agreement." And he said, "Would you manage me?" And then Dick James came to him and said, "Well, why don't I do it with Ray? You know, so you got Ray, and then we'll do a deal. We'll give him an office. We'll give him an advance on his money, on his earnings from you, etc., etc." Although none of us ever knew at that point we were going to earn anything, and so that's where it started. So.
So there was no Elton. Sorry to interrupt you, but at that point there was no Elton John album. Like Empty Sky hadn't. That didn't happen. It hadn't happened yet, or had it?
No, it was just. It was at the very Empty Sky. So he was now in the system, if you like, of Dick James music, and he'd started with Steve Brown, who was a very, very, very important and helped Elton a lot within the Dick James organization. Dick had basically gone around the back of Graham and all of us and just signed Elton direct and Bernie and gave them a contract. And it came to the point where Elton and Bernie came to me and asked me if I would be their manager. Yeah, they released Skyline Pigeon as a single, yeah. And then on the back of it they made the album of Empty Sky, you know. But it was there that they wanted to have, they wanted me to manage them. So they came to me, and because I just finished with the Idol race. I mean, we're all great mates, but Jeff had gone on to the Move, and I loved all the band, but I wanted something new to do. And I said, well, that's fantastic, because I always believed in you when I first saw you. And this would be great. And then that's when Dick said to Elton, well, I'll do it with Ray and we'll split the management. And that's when we started. So when you see the film and you see me with my feet up on the table and ask Elton, what's your name then? It's like, that's quite fictitious, because all that happened long before Dick was involved in the story. And but you know, I think the film is great entertainment. It really is. It's great entertainment, and yeah, there's lots of inaccuracies, but you know, I guess I'm fortunate to be in it, really.
I was very happy to see you in it. By the way, when Elton gets on the piano and just does that, and your character says, "You just made that up now," that anything like that ever happened?
No, because, well, first of all, he's playing a song that hadn't been written, you know, so that didn't happen.
No, but in the movie, I just saw it again a few days ago, but in the movie, doesn't he just dabble on the piano at one point?
Yeah, was it the opening of Border Song or something?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it was. Anyway, I didn't recognize it. I know Border Song very well, but
he was just a awesome piano player. But that didn't actually. I mean, that is the theatre. So when I say to him, "What's your name then?" With my feet on the table, he says Elton, and then he looks up at a picture of John Lennon and says Elton John. Where, in fact, he you know, the first meeting he said, "I've got a name if I go solo, and it's Elton John, and it's based on Long John Beaudin using his name, and then Elton Dean, who was in the band." Yeah. And that's how that name came about.
Yeah.
But it's all it's very entertaining.
I've got an interview with Long John Baldry in my my huge reel-to-reel. God, those are fun. Baking those things, trying to make them sound good again. But Elton, Long John Baldry talks in depth about Elton and all that stuff, but I've got to bake it to make it sound good because it
How
sounds.
many years ago was that?
He was living in Vancouver at that point, and it would have been when I first got into radio. It would have been a few years after, 87, I think. The movie was, like, again, I was so happy to see you in the movie because I've always wanted to talk to you. You played such an integral part in all this. And when I saw you, I actually got emotional watching you going, there he is. That's the guy. Because I'd known your story from way back when. But anyway, when you left the movie theater, what were you feeling? We can go back to the story in a second, but what were you feeling?
Well, first of all, I was here in North Carolina when the film came out in France in May at the film festival. So as I was in North Carolina, there were no real showings in North Carolina. The first views were out in the film festival, and then there was the big release at Leicester Square. And I was flying to London literally 2 days later and coming to England, and then it was going to be released in North Carolina. So it was one of those weird things. So eventually I went to, we have a home in near Midhurst. I don't know whether you know England, down in West Sussex. And I took my wife to the local cinema to see it in Chichester. And it was just a little old cinema. And I went in there and I felt really weird watching it because I didn't know really what to expect. I had, I'd never been told that I was in it, but because it's a true fantasy, I guess they didn't have to, they didn't portray me in a bad way, I don't think. And so, one couldn't get upset really, and it's a fantasy. So I watched it, and then I had some people in the local pub said, can we come and watch it with you? And so we did that, and that was fun.
We'll have more of our conversation with Ray Williams coming up next week. We talked for a few hours. He's got some great stories to tell. And as I mentioned in the beginning, working with Sonny and Cher and being at the Troubadour with Elton John, where, Neil Diamond was there. A lot of those West Coast cats were just hanging around, which made Elton John very nervous. More tales to tell coming up next week. Make sure you comment on our video, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. I'm John Beaudin from Rock History Music.